Welcome to the Good Enough Lap Guide and the Ford Mustang GT4 at Hockenheimring, your lap guide to move up through the splits. The purpose of this video is to give you guys a foundation that you can build a solid, consistent lap off of. Once you can run those solid, consistent laps, you get in the race with the goal to finish the race, you will move up through the splits. First, we'll talk about the track characteristics of Hockenheimring. So this is a tight, technical track. It's actually an old school track that they did a lot of modifications on to make it a smaller track, but because it's an old school track, it's pretty tight and narrow. I don't really see any obvious passing opportunities on this track. This is one of those tracks where you got to put pressure on somebody, wait for them to make a mistake, and then you take advantage of that mistake. Next, we'll talk about the car characteristics of the Ford Mustang GT4. So around the Hockenheimring, the car is a little bit loose on throttle, so you just got to be really careful about that. It reminds me a lot of Zandvoort, with a lot of corners flowing one into the next. So the car's in this weight transfer state a lot, and that tends to upset the Mustang for whatever reason. So you just got to be really careful when getting on throttle. On entry, same thing that we've seen all season. If you ever drive the car, you're going to have understeer on entry and understeer through the middle of the corner. So if you find the car understeering, just back it up a little bit. It should rotate nicely in the corner. And then again, just be careful when getting on throttle coming out of the corner. The weather for this lap was 66 degrees Fahrenheit or 18.88 degrees Celsius. The track temp was 67 degrees Fahrenheit or 19.44 degrees Celsius. The lap time was a 146.259. Sector 1 was a 23.421. Sector 2 was a 49.013. And Sector 3 was a 33.825. Alright, let's get into the lap. For turn 1, we're going to brake right where the curb starts on the left. And then our turn in is going to be just before the 50 marker. It's going to be a middle apex for the corner. You can also cut over the curb. This lap I don't do it, but please feel free to experiment with that and see what works best for you. Then on exit, you can use up all this curb on the outside so you can get the best run out of the corner. I can see this being an opportunity to pass if someone makes a mistake coming through the first corner. Turn 2, we're going to brake right in the middle point of the 150 and the 100 marker. Then our turn in will be just before the 50 marker. Then it'll be a middle apex for the corner. We want to keep the car to the right side of the track as much as we can so we get the best entry into the next corner. It's going to be a late apex for turn 4, and especially when you're on cold tires, you got to be really careful to be going full throttle all the way through this corner because the rear end is going to want to step out on you. Get a couple laps on your tires. The car gets a little bit more secure, but this is a pretty gnarly corner because you have to go full throttle through here to get the best run going into the turn 6 because it is another passing opportunity if they mess up this corner and you get a good run through there. If you can stay full throttle where they have to lift, you can use that opportunity to pass going into 6. If you guys are enjoying this video, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. I'm doing these every week so you can catch the next one when it comes out. For turn 6, we're going to brake about 30 to 40 feet before the 150 marker. And then our turn in will be just past the 50 marker. For turn 6, you got to get the car really wound down. I cut over the curb here. You don't have to cut over the curb because it can unsettle the car. So this is another one of those corners you want to experiment with. But the most important thing is just getting the car slowed down for the corner. For turn 7, we're going to turn in about 10 to 15 feet past the curb on the left. And then we're just going to crack the throttle just a little bit to get a little bit more rotation in the corner and then get back on the throttle. We're going to cut over the curb. It's going to be a middle apex. For turn 8, we're going to brake before the curb ends on the right. Then we're going to begin our turn in just before the curb starts on the right. It'll be a middle apex for the corner, and you don't want to touch the red curb on the inside because it'll just unsettle the car and you won't be able to get the power down when you need to. For turn 10, this is the reference point for when you want to begin your turn in for the corner. It's also, you could call it a very late apex for turn 9, but the main point is you want to get to the curb where it's ending on the left to give you the best angle going into turn 10. It's going to be a late apex for turn 10. This is another one of those corners that's really tricky on throttle. The car has a lot of rotation in it. You're going to see we're actually counter steering as we're going through the later part of this corner. So just be careful when you're going through this corner. You got to be really gradual with the throttle. Then on exit, it's okay to get up on that red curb. You just don't want to go on the back side of it. And also take note as we're steering to the left as we're coming out of the corner to show you just how much rotation the rear end has in the Mustang coming out of this corner. Turn 11, there's no obvious braking point, but it's about 10 to 15 feet as the wall comes to the track on the left. And then our turn in will begin shortly after that. It'll be a later apex for the corner, and you are going to want to cut over the curb just a little bit. For turn 12, our braking point is going to be in between the 100 and the 50 marker. Then we're going to start a very gradual turn in just after the 50 marker. You're going to wait a little bit before you really turn the car in. You're going to be aiming for a middle apex on the corner. There's a good amount of camber in this corner, so it does feel like you get in a nice little pocket when you hit this corner right. Again, you're going to see we're going to be very patient when getting on the throttle so the rear end doesn't step out on us. For turn 13, we're just going to try and straighten this out, cut over the curb. Our braking point for turn 15 is actually as we're going to be coming out of turn 14. And then it'll be a late apex for the corner. The next point we'll be focusing on is this little gap in between the two curbs on the left. That's kind of the top of the arc that we're going to reach to begin our turn in going into turn 16. Also, something to note is how we're just playing with the throttle with the steering at the same time as we're going through this whole section to help the car rotate and get that right line through the corner. Then as we're heading through the last corner, you can cut over the curb. I probably cut over the curb a little bit too much here. Again, experiment with it, see what works best for you. And that's your good enough lap guide in the Ford Mustang GT4 at the Hockenheimring. If you guys enjoyed this video, please hit that thumbs up button. I appreciate it. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.